Hi, fans of high quality entertainment. A few days ago, I posted a video 50 artists I've never had in my either CD or vinyl collection. So, in this video, I'm going to show you over 50 artists that I once had in my music collection, either on vinyl or CD. And for the most part, I like these artists, but probably just, I didn't like them enough to keep them in my collection for too long. And I think that happens with, a lot of us that collect music will be interested in a certain artist, and it just, it might last for a few months or a year or two, and then you kind of lose interest in them for whatever reason. But there are of course a lot of bands through the years that I've been very loyal to also. So here we go. And so without trying to make this video too long, I'll just kind of quickly mention what I remember of the albums I owned by these artists. So Billy Joel, yeah, I used to collect him. I used to collect vinyl records of his in the late 70s, early 80s. I think the last one I bought was The Bridge, which I thought was kind of a mediocre Billy Joel album. But, I bought The Stranger, Glass Houses. Yeah, I was buying Billy Joel albums for a few years. And, I respect him as an artist, but I just don't have any interest in his music these days. Fleetwood Mac, yeah, I love. I never did get into the 60s Fleetwood Mac at all. Never bought those albums or the early 70s. But of course, I was a fan of when Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham were in the band. I love the self-titled Fleetwood Mac, and then Rumors, of course, is one of the greatest albums of all time. And I love Tusk even more than Rumors. But after Rumors, I never did buy any more Fleetwood Mac albums. Just kind of lost interest in them. Jethro Tull. Poor Jethro Tull. I've had I've had them on vinyl and CD. I just noticed when, like when I bought the Thick as a Brick box set, I would just never play it, even though I enjoy it. Whenever I would have a Jethro Tull CD in my collection, it would just sit there for months on end. I'll play it when I buy it, but then I would rarely play it afterwards. So at the moment, I totally respect Jethro Tull and Ian Anderson, but I don't have anything by them in my collection at the moment. So yeah, I bought, when the albums came out, I bought Thick as a Brick, A Passion Play, War Child, which I think is underrated, Minstrel in the Gallery, Songs from the Wood. I think after Songs from the Wood, I stopped buying Jethro Tull albums for the most part. Elton John, yeah. In the 70s, I was buying Elton John albums when they were released. Uh, I'd say probably half a dozen of his albums. And, he is one of the greats. But these days, I would rather listen to other music than Elton John's classic period from the 70s. Billy Idol. Yeah, I like Billy Idol. His self-titled with White Wedding, a couple of other hits on it. And then Rebel Yell, which was awesome. I would like to get that at some point again because it is such a good rock album. And then the follow-up, which was kind of disappointing at the time, but still, Billy Joel. Billy Idol is cool in my books, and from what I've read, he still puts on a good show today. That is Kansas. Yeah. Uh, the only Kansas album I ever bought was Leftoverture, which of course features that they're a huge hit, Carry On My Wayward Son. And I enjoyed it, but I just never totally got into the band. Even though hearing back some of their early albums, I'm pretty impressed with them. And I've covered some of their songs on my Patreon. So, very talented band for sure. Steely Dan. Yeah, in the 70s, I had maybe one or two vinyl records by Steely Dan, and I had their greatest hits, double vinyl record. They're just, they just kind of bore me. So I really don't have much interest in their music. Now, I never bought any Journey albums with Steve Perry on vocals, but I did buy, I believe it was their third album. It was called Next, and it was more jazz rockish, and it was good, but that's the only Journey album I've ever bought. I don't have any interest really in the Steve Perry era of Journey. Rick Derringer. Yep. That's the only album of his I ever bought, All American Boy, with his hit single, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. And then, of course, he was in the Edgar Winter group for 2 or 3 albums. Very talented musician, and I enjoyed that album, but I just don't have it on CD at the moment. Television, I bought, I think I even bought the second album when it came out. But once again, just a band that I enjoyed, when I bought the album, Marquee Moon, but I'd just rather listen to Talking Heads or Sparks. Foreigner, I bought the very first Foreigner album, and that was it. Even though, I did enjoy a couple of their hit singles, like Urgent back in the 80s. Kiss. Yeah, I don't have any Kiss at the moment. I did have their debut album, which is my favorite, but it would just sit in my collection year after year. I would never play it. I know it really well, of course. Yeah, I was buying Kiss albums. I bought Hotter Than Hell, which was disappointing. Mainly the production sucked. And then Dressed to Kill was good. Kiss Alive was awesome when it came out. And then I bought Destroyer. And I never bought Love Gun or anything else after that. So, yeah, Destroyer was the last Kiss album I ever bought. Stevie Wonder, the only album of his I ever bought was Songs in the Key of Life, which I really did enjoy. And, I've heard some of his other albums, of course, but I just never bought any of them. But a great talent for sure. Boston, I bought the debut album by Boston. One of the greatest debut albums ever. And I never bought anything like, their second album and at the time it seemed to, back in the 70s, bands would release an album sometimes twice a year. And I just remember it taking a long, long time for the second Boston album to come out. And by the time it did, I'd lost interest in Boston. The Police, I bought their first album with Roxanne on it and Don't Stand So Close to Me. But, I also bought Synchronicity. Yeah, I did buy that one too. But I'm just not, for me, they're just a good band. They're just not a band that I've ever gone crazy over. This is Canadian content. So if you're not Canadian, you might wonder who the heck is this? It is Max Webster with Kim Mitchell wearing the hat. He later had a pretty successful Canadian solo career, and he's done radio since then, and he's still touring his solo act. Yeah, Max Webster, a very good Canadian band. I just don't have them on CD at the moment. But I was buying all of their vinyl records back in the day, and they even did one song on one of their albums with a band called Rush. That's right. They were friends of the band Rush, and they would sometimes open up concerts for Rush too. That's Bad Company. Yeah, I used to really enjoy Bad Company. My favorite would be uh, Burning Sky, which I think is underrated. But yeah, I really enjoyed their first four albums, and then I lost interest in them. Bob Seger, I bought Night Moves and maybe one other album. I just, I think he's one of the greats from the 70s, and just some classic radio hits. John Cougar Mellencamp. Yeah, he's probably the one artist I've really lost interest a lot through the years, because in the early 80s up to the early 90s, I was buying every John Cougar Mellencamp album. Uh, and then it just, there just seemed a point where he was kind of just going through the motions making his albums, and I stopped buying them. But Scarecrow was a great album, American Fool, and The Lonesome Jubilee was probably my favorite, but I'm not really a fan of John Cougar Mellencamp. Don't even like saying the name. Moby Grape, yeah, the only album I bought by them was in a cutout bin, and it wasn't it was, I think, maybe one or two original members, and the album was called Truly Fine Citizen. Uh, but I never did buy any of the classic Moby Grape albums. Meatloaf. Who doesn't love Meatloaf? Yeah, I had Bad Out of Hell, and that was it. I did enjoy it at the time, when it came out. And then, like I said, after a few months of listening to it, you just get kind of tired of it. And when a new album comes out by him, it's like by that time I've moved on. Who doesn't love Aerosmith? Uh, yeah, I bought Toys in the Attic, which is my favorite Aerosmith album. I never did buy rocks for whatever reason. And then I was buying, when they had their big comeback in the 80s, I was buying, I think the last one I bought was Eat the Rich. And then once again, I just lost interest in them. But Toys in the Attic is awesome. Judas Priest, I bought their second album. No, or was it their first? Sad Wings of Destiny. I think that their first album, which I liked. And then a few years back, I bought Painkiller, which was awesome. But once again, I never really played it that much. So I no longer have it in my collection. But totally respect Judas Priest. That is the Arcade Fire. Took me a second. Yeah, I bought Funeral when it came out. I love that album. And then Black Bible, was it called? That was good. And then they got a bit too dancey for me or something. And I just, kind of lost interest in them. But I was a big fan for a couple of years. Prince. I bought Purple Rain, of course. Parade. The follow up to Purple Rain, 30 Days Around the World, or whatever it was called. That was really good with Raspberry Beret and everything. So, yeah, I probably bought 4 or 5 Prince albums in the 80s, and he was one of the greats for sure. Rush. I've had Rush in it.